What can be said about the Seiko turtle that hasn't been said before? Well, for starters, welcome to Timepiece. This is an ISO certified diver. What does that mean? Well, the term divers is a protected term. If you see that word on a watch, it means that it follows the international standard for divers' watches. That's ISO 6425, which was actually developed on the basis of Seiko's own testing standards. It states that if it's an analog watch, it must have a unidirectional rotating bezel with full minute graduations and markings every 5 minutes. Every watch must complete a pressure test to 125% of the listed depth rating held for 2 hours. That means when you see 200 meters, it really means all 200 meters. And yes, every single individual watch gets tested. It also states that the watch needs a luminous seconds hand to indicate that it's running in total darkness. It has to maintain accuracy after exposure to a magnetic field. Then it gets hit with a pendulum to test for shock resistance before heading into another pressure test, this time in salt water. After that, it spends 50 more hours underwater to make sure there really are no leaks. The whole time they're running condensation tests to check for leaks in between testing. Finally, they make sure both ends of the strap can withstand 45 pounds of force. Now, the turtle. White on black on stainless, monochromatic tool watch, as cool as it gets. Let's start with the dial. We have a plastic, almost an eggshell-like finish to it, extremely legible, semi-crosshair dial with a sword at 12 o'clock. The crosshair is there to increase immediate orientation and readability. For comparison, here is a 50-year-old Devil Diver Accutron Deep Sea. Honestly, I just wanted to plug this sweet watch. Video coming soon. The markers are applied, indices. Do you remember those puffy stickers from the 80s? Yeah, that's kind of what they're like. Someone out there has to know exactly what I'm talking about. No numerals. Again, legibility here is the name of the game. It does have a chapter ring with full minute graduations. I'm not a huge fan of chapter rings, and I wish Seiko didn't love them as much. I feel like chapter rings increase dial size and limit hand length almost in an artificial way, but it's a design style that Seiko is married to. I like chapter rings when they are incorporated into the dial design, like with the Tudor Pelagos or the Victorinox Enox, but round, uniform chapter rings are such a waste of dial space and are the cause of so many quality control issues with Seiko. We'll get into that, but I wish they could get rid of them. But it does have a day-date window at 3 o'clock, blue Saturday text, and then red Sunday text, to remind you that you're going back to work in however many hours. We've got a printed Seiko text logo with automatic divers, 200 meters, and the Prospex logo printed on the dial. The print quality is excellent, but alignment on these can be terrible. I got lucky. This one is basically perfect, but they can get pretty sloppy. We've got a modern take on the classic Seiko Aero handset that we've seen on their hyper-focused tuna dive watches since the mid-70s. Really an iconic dive watch handset. Seiko has been using these for decades because of how well it works, and they'll continue to do so for that reason. That said, I've never loved how this handset looks. I think it looks like each hand was independently designed by 3 separate people in 3 separate rooms. There is no continuity between the hands. However, for that same reason, the extreme contrast in hand design further increases legibility. There will be no confusing these hands ever. The loom on the seconds hand is on the opposite side, as you might expect. They say it's because underwater you don't need to read the seconds, you only need to know that the watch is in fact running. Bogus. It was first introduced on Seiko's first quartz divers, those old school tunas, to reduce stress on the movement. Keeping the loom ball close to the hand stack reduced the torque needed to move it and imparts significantly less stress on the gear trains of those early quartz movements. When they reintroduced this handset on the SKX007 in 1996, they kept the design for those same reasons, and it's still being used today. Mystery solved. The original Turtle had a lollipop seconds hand, which I actually prefer, but not enough to have someone swap it out. The bezel on this is interesting. There is a silicone washer on the underside of the bezel, which creates a smooth, very even, and very regular friction to the action, but the bezel, no complaints there. The crystal is Hardlex. That's Seiko's in-house, homegrown crystal that has nothing to do with this man. It's a synthetic barium silicon composite mineral glass that has been toughened at a molecular level to resist knocks and scratching. Not as scratch resistant as sapphire, but in my experience it holds up very well. No anti-reflective coating on the crystal, but reflections and smudges haven't been bad. We've got a screwed-on crown that's unsigned, probably a budget choice. If Seiko passes those savings on to the customer, and I think they actually do, I'm for that. Let's look at the lugs. We've got that iconic Japanese cushion-style case that sits fairly high on the wrist, but the drilled lugs are very practical for strap changes, also in line with that retro styling. If we flip it over and work the other side, we can see the case back, the Seiko Tsunami, very high quality. The strap is Seiko's new soft rubber formula, pliable, comfortable, and still as strong as ever. I like rubber straps in the summer when I'm wearing short sleeves. Rubber straps can kind of get caught up in long sleeves for me, but yeah. The inside of this strap has a textured, almost organic looking pattern, very comfortable to wear. The keeper and the buckle are also very well made. Even though it's just a rubber strap, there is excellent attention to detail. Deep metal brushing on the keeper with a polished bevel really classes up the joint, for lack of a better phrase. It has excellent finishing and it's very sturdy. It's very easy to make a cheap looking rubber strap, but this looks and feels like a very high quality rubber. The accordion folds provide comfort but also serve a purpose. When you wear this watch over a wetsuit and dive, your body compresses as you dive deeper. As your wrist shrinks, these folds maintain tension. Would you actually dive with this watch? I don't know. I mean, if you're actually diving, you're probably using a dive computer, but this watch could certainly be used if you wanted a mechanical backup. Nobody buys Seamasters or Submariners to actually dive. If you dive with a luxury watch, you're either dense, proving a point, or have more money than brains. Now, diving with the Turtle? Sure. And here it is, people. Yep, every time. The only reason half of you are even watching this. The Royal Swiss-made calipers endorsed by 2 old-school German woodworking machinists. A level of precision never before seen by mankind. We have an overall case diameter of just shy of 45 millimeters. Bezel is just about 42. 22 millimeter lugs. About 47 millimeter lug to lug. And 13 millimeters thick. This watch is a little over 44 millimeters, but it wears like a 42. That's bigger than I want to wear, even on my 8-inch wrist. That said, this is a focused tool watch made for professional divers. This watch was purpose-built as a professional dive watch. It's why the watch is cool. If there ever was a watch that's allowed to be big, it's a professional dive watch. Keeping it off the bracelet is going to help this watch wear relatively smaller if you're like me and prefer smaller watches. I have a big wrist and even I don't like big watches. It's not big enough to be a problem, but it's bigger than I want to buy, own, and wear. So the movement is Seiko's in-house 4R36 movement, which has 24 joules and a day-date complication. It features hacking seconds and hand winding. The second hand is going to move 6 times per second. That's good for 21,600 beats per hour. The wire-thin seconds hand and the loom ball being close to the hand stack do a good job at making the beat rate seem smoother than it actually is. That's a nice side effect of that design choice. The listed tolerance for this movement is -35 to +45 seconds per day, which is lousy, but that's Seiko sandbagging a little bit. Mine's running +6 seconds per day, nearly chronometer spec, and for around $200 it makes you think what the hell is going on in Switzerland. Lastly, it has a power reserve of 41 hours. So onto the water resistance, 200 meters. Again, when you buy this watch, you know that it's good to go because of that ISO certification. Seiko spends lots of money ISO testing all of their divers. They wouldn't do it if they didn't think it was critically important. Let's see a loom shot now. So Seiko has the best loom in the industry. It's like you plucked this thing off the wrist of a Chernobyl victim. Even their loom is in-house. It's just one of the many reasons we like Seiko. There are a few color combinations available for this one. I like the Blue Lagoon Special, the Gold Girdle, and the Ninja Turtle. My only real complaint is it took them 2 years to release the black one. Come on, Seiko, it's 2018. These originally sold for around $350, but if you find the right deal, you can get these for a steal. All said, I got this used in perfect condition for $165. At that price, this represents one of the greatest value propositions of any watch available today. Servicing might cost more than you paid for the watch, but a lower beat rate and great reliability mean that some Seikos have been known to go for decades without really needing a service. I say every watch is an exercise in compromise, but this watch, it really is tricky to point out flaws, especially if your alignment is good. It's a little too big for one, and the handset is stubby, but that's about it. If you like this styling and can handle the size, there isn't a reason not to pick one of these up. Some of my stylistic preferences differ from what this watch offers. I like less busy bezel inserts and dislike chapter rings, but those aren't examples of what this watch is doing wrong. Those are just my preferences. Chapter rings and fully indexed bezels are what Seiko divers are all about. It's like going to see the Mona Lisa and complaining that she's Caucasian with brown eyes. Like, dude, get with the program. That'll do it for today. A sincere thank you to anyone who is watching this as a subscriber. Your early support means a lot both to me and to the channel. Okay, that's enough. Thanks for watching. See you next time.